Hello, thanks for tuning in and welcome to the pool party. I hope you can swim because we're definitely diving into the deep end with a huge splash of truth, facts, evidence, information, and proof. Swim. Say what you mean. It's talk about talking. How we listen, how we hear, how we speak, how we hear what we're listening to when we speak, how a listener hears what we're saying, if what we're saying, what they're actually hearing and or understanding. Is it clear? Swim. Say what you mean. Well, that's just the beginning of understanding, because after we get that understanding, how do we accept it? How we respond if it's not what we expect is paramount. Are you okay with the truth? Are you man, woman, human, or spiritual enough to accept the truth? Let's find out. Welcome to the SWYM-ing Pool with your host, Travis Bridges.
Well, hello, how you doing? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me now? Well, here's hoping you're having a fantastic Wednesday. You're probably wondering, why is the screen black? Well, I'll tell you why the screen is black. The screen is black because I'm black. In case you didn't know. Well, not really. The screen is black because I'm just in blackout mode in support of my moment as of now. And for the next week or so, maybe 2 or 3 at the most, I will be black. Especially in February. No, I'm just laughing to keep from crying. But anyway, my name is Travis Bridges. Here's hoping you're having a fantastic Wednesday evening. Welcome to the SWYM-ing Pool. This is SWYM, SWYM. It is the acronym for Say What You Mean. It's important that we do that. Everybody says that they mean what they say, but not everybody holds up to it. I have been guilty of it, and I have been on a quest lately to make sure that I adhere to that. It's a good thing. There's no one that has a good reputation that doesn't have that included. If you want to depend on somebody, you want them to be reliable. You want their word to mean something. If it's your friend, if it's your significant other, my God, if it's your husband or your wife, and someone that you're doing business with, my God, you definitely want them to be a person, a man or a woman of their word. And it's just so disappointing when people say they're going to do something. You ever have somebody say they're going to do something, and then you look for them and they're nowhere to be found, and you're like, man, I thought, what happened? And then they'll tell you something, like, well, what had happened was, and then, you will be left holding some bag. Or let's just say if somebody tells you they're going to show up at 4:00, and then at like 4:05, they call you and say, hey, I'm on the way, or something happened. Many people don't get uptight, but I just kind of sort of do. And I'm just here to remind people, if you tell somebody you're going to be there at 4:00 and at 4:30 that you're not going to make it, don't wait till 5 till to call or just show up late. Do something, say something. It's not going to hurt you. And if you build up that kind of reputation, you'll have some really good friends who will have good things to say about you. So keep that in mind. Okay. I do have a canned guest that I'm going to bring on later. And I'm going to be on with that guest for right at about 49 minutes. So I've got now about 6 more minutes to talk before we run over our time. And I'm going to use the rest of the time left to talk about the subjects I'm going to jump on tonight. And they're kind of interesting. The last couple of weeks have been interesting. I just like to talk, and I don't care if I only have 6 people. Hey, Kimberly, how you doing? Our monk finally showed up. Welcome to the party. Sure do appreciate you. That means I've got 5 more people that are hiding out in the cut. I want you to know how much I appreciate it. Do me a small favor. I've been doing this since the COVID concert series, and I'm right at about 500 and maybe 50 and some change subscribers, and that's okay because I'm not here for subscribers. However, if I can cross that 1,000 mark, I'll be happy because that way I can go live mobile and I don't have to, be black. That's always funny to me. Well, not really. But yeah, 1,000 subscribers would cause me to be able to use my mobile phone or just, be a little bit more flexible. Plus, it says that, I have more than one follower. I used to work for this one radio station, and it only had like 500 watts. And we used to get teased, and they would say, nobody's listening but the owner's mama and a couple of people in the parking lot. And it was kind of sort of true. It was a hometown radio station, and it could reach the hometown, but you mess around and go past the stop sign and you got nothing but fuzz. Anyway, that's how I feel right now. But it's okay. Despise not small beginnings. And this is somewhat of a small beginning, but that's all right. I'm looking forward to it because every time that I turn on this microphone and or this computer, I learn something and I get stronger. And I have a lot of YouTube idols that I really like and that I listen to throughout the day and night. And I do remember when many of them started, and they were kind of sort of doing the same thing I'm doing. And I think it's cool to, have such an opportunity with social media and just technology in general that, people can express themselves, and then other people with like hearts and minds can join in and just be cool with it. Hey, Christine, how you doing? Thanks for hanging out with me. So I'm going to tell you my subjects. I'm going to take a shout break, and then I'm going to come back and then with my guest, and we're going to talk it out and talk it out. No, I don't have music. I'm kind of like mobile. So within the next few weeks, I'm going to stay black until I get set up again. But anyway, issues and topics this week: solving problems, communication, yes or no responses for clarity. I'm going to repeat that, okay? Solving problems, communication / yes or no responses for clarity. Conversation. Oh no, that was a little footnote. What else here? Oh yeah. Oh, the next topics / subject is going to church or staying home. Oops. Did he say going to church? Now, why would he talk about religion? Because everybody else is talking about it and thinking about it, and people have thoughts and minds, thoughts and feelings about it. But I guess it's one of those sensitive subjects, people try to stay away from. Let's see. It's politics, religion, sex, and something else. Races, or whatever. Yeah, those are the areas that are sort of kind of sensitive. So I'm going to get into going to church or staying home. Why are people frowned on when they don't go or stop going to church? And tithing. Does not tithing exclude you from being a member of a church? Man, that's a deep subject. Why are you going to talk about that? Why not? Is giving from your heart in other ways a form of tithing at all? And if you are a minister / preacher, I don't have a side. I do believe in tithing. I support tithing, and I'm not trying to bring any kind of smoke towards, principles, biblical principles or, church ethics. So I'm just talking about it because that's what this is. It's talk about talking. So I'm talking about whether you go to church or stay home, or whether having yes or no questions is, a shortcut to solving problems or finding out where problems lie. So with that said, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to come back with my guest. Again, hello, Kimberly, our monk, Christine is in the house, and somebody else was here, but then they took off. So that's 3 people and 3 people that are hiding out. So do me a favor, hold the spot you got. I'll be right back. And I wonder if this camera is on. If it is, let's see. Let me just hide it in case it is. So let's see. Let me do this. I'll be right back, okay? Don't move.
The Swimming Pool with Travis Bridges is a talk segment about talking. Talk about talking? Yes, talk about talking. It's designed to bring awareness to how we listen, how we hear, and what we do with the information we receive during communication. The mind is automatically programmed to protect the body and soul. It displays that through each and every encounter we experience. If any part of the body is threatened, the mind will automatically issue the flight command. The flight command to retreat to safety. Well, that same command is also deployed when our ego is threatened. The ego, yes, the ego. It's so natural and common, it happens oftentimes without us even knowing. Engaging in conversation and staying focused on what is present is considered mental fitness. It strengthens our emotions and helps us to gain control of our circumstances instead of having our circumstances overtake our thinking and our very existence. It's a difficult task to achieve because our feelings, beliefs, and desires are so strong that it causes us to totally disregard even the most common or basic reasoning. This live stream is only here to bring awareness to that subconscious process. Nothing or no one is actually wrong. However, the idea of being open to anything outside of what we've already concluded is golden, especially if the new information is transparent. The SWYM developers would like to say thanks for supporting, watching, listening, and sharing this information. Now, back to the swimming pool. Let's dive in and swim. Mighty Horn Music. Smooth jazz, top 40, R&B, inspirationals, and more. Live from the Hollywood Home Studio. Like, share, subscribe. And thanks for tuning in.
Okay, we're here with our guest, and as usual, we don't call names or say names, or we don't talk about business or brands or anything like that. It's just pretty much conversation back and forth, and we're going to get right into it. Guest, how are you today?
I'm great.
I'll say this evening for time's sake purposes. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I want to get right into it right away. I have a couple of different topics, and we're going to get to them as soon and as best as we can and cover as much of them as we can. The first topic or subject is going to be solving problems with communication, and the subtopic of that is going to be yes or no responses for clarity. And the second part of our interview was going to be going to church or staying home. So once again, part one, solving problems, communication, yes or no responses, and going to church or staying home. Anything about either of those subjects that bother you in any kind of way?
No.
Okay. All right. So let's jump right on it. And I'm going to start with a conversation that our audience doesn't know about, but you and I had a conversation yesterday, and we don't have to discuss the particulars of that. But if you remember, like I remember, when we started talking, you shared something with me, and then I had a conversation with you because I felt at that time I needed to, listen to my brother and be as close to a brother as I could without sounding counseling-like. But I think after we had the conversation, we both had some different information after we walked it through and talked it through. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And which brings me right to my point. Solving problems with communication and yes and no responses. I don't know what has happened to me over the last few years, but I just feel this calling, to just communicate and talk and analyze situations, because I am convinced that there is no problem ever, particularly basic stuff. I don't know enough about politics and world issues to say what can't be solved, but everyone has a desire in their heart for world peace and to solve world hunger. And I believe every problem, we're intelligent enough as human beings that if we talk enough, if we listen enough, if we're compassionate and considerate enough, and even more so, if we are respectful enough of each other that we can always get to the bottom. So there's no reason why there should ever be unsolved problems. Now, when it comes to someone's attitude and how they feel about a problem that has either been addressed and or attempted to solve, that's a whole nother story within itself. So I want some of your input on solving problems. If you can tell me, why do you think there are problems that are not solved, particularly in homes between people, husband and wife, brothers and sisters, and people, with jobs or whatnot, even in traffic? Why do we have so many problems unsolved?
Because people are selfish and always thinking of themselves and not compassionate, thinking of the other individual. They're always familiar with their feelings, but they're not in touch with the other person's feelings.
Okay, that definitely correlates with what I just said. And what do you think, would be an avenue to solve some of these problems, to bring about peace? I think if we have more individual peace, we can have world peace. But what do you think the answer is to solving some of the unsolved problems amongst, brotherins or sisterins?
Well, I believe that it's already been laid out for us as a believer, okay? It's already been laid out for us. And because of the way we think, and the way we see and hear things, if we don't know, if I can refer to my instruction manual, that's where my wisdom comes from, to know what to do and what not to do when it comes to other people and when it comes to communicate, because I don't know it all, and neither does anybody else. There's only one person that knows it all, and that's the one that made me. So I always refer to this manual to get an idea, find out exactly what it is that I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to handle it when I'm dealing with other people.
So what is the way? Yeah, how do we, what is the one way? If there was a one shot, if you could give me one sentence on how to solve problem, what is the best way to solve problems?
Listening, first of all, to the other person. 9 times out of 10, people already tell you, if you learn to listen to them with the understanding of not being so quick to input, listen to them with your heart, not with your head. Sometimes we have a tendency to listen to one another with our heads, with the intent of giving a word in edgewise. But when you really listen to an individual with your heart, then you can really relate. You understand?
Sure.
You'll have a better understanding of how to communicate. And I think that's one thing we haven't really learned how to do, is really listen with our hearts. Because when we listen with our hearts, we're more compassionate, because we can relate. But when we listen with our heads, with distance, it's my way or the highway when we listen with our heads and not our hearts.
Okay, I think that's a two-edged sword in its own way. Sometimes the heart can get us in a place, that the head can get us out of, or vice versa. Sometimes when we listen with our heart, we get emotionally involved, and then we can't think. So I hear what you're saying. And when you're talking about compassion and being considerate, I think that makes sense. But listening sometimes with your heart, how do you avoid being emotionally influenced by something when you allow your heart to be the guide?
Well, as I was sharing earlier, as I said earlier, I listened to the instruction manual, and it tells me, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So I already know, as a believer, to not allow my emotions, I can separate the two, not allow my emotions to get the best of me.
Okay, I think what you just said is being able to separate the two. That's a key nugget right there. Mm-hmm. Being able to separate the two. So I get it now. It makes sense. And thanks for responding to that. You said listening with your heart, but then having the knowledge and understanding to know how to separate the two. Because if you listen only with your heart, it's easy to get caught up with an emotion. And if you only listen to your head, you almost can't hear the other person. So it kind of goes hand in hand. You have to be intelligent when you're communicating. And I think that would be the answer to the question I asked you in a nutshell. You solve problems by listening and hearing, and using your head and your heart, as well as knowing the difference and how to differentiate between your emotions and what you know. So that's good. I appreciate that. I have my notes here. Okay, now I have a way of responding, and I think when someone, and me included, when we want to convince someone, when you just made a comment about, your way or the highway or my way or the highway, somehow or another, we want our way so much that it's hard to listen to what someone else is saying or thinking or feeling or even believing. But when you get down to yes or no questions, I think yes or no questions are important. And many people, I find, are afraid of yes or no questions because a yes or no question doesn't give you the opportunity to be influential, in your way or the highway, your way of highway method. So what is your take on yes or no questions? I believe yes or no questions are very important when you're trying to get to the bottom of something. But I find, many people that I interact with have trouble with answering yes or no. They want to do so much explaining. And I think for the purpose of trying to convince or, to sway to sway their side of to be, I don't want to get mixed up with my words. Just tell me, what is your opinion about yes or no questions or answers?
A question or an answer. Yes and no is fine, but we've been trained to add more to it. We want to give our perspective on it.
Trained by who? How? What do you mean we've been trained?
Well, by communication. The way we talk. We always want to explain as to why it's this way or as to why it's not that way.
Okay, when I talk about yes or no questions, I'm talking about at a time of conflict. Sometimes if two people are having a conversation and they're back and forth and they're in a good place, lengthy conversations and explanations, it works well. But when you're in a place of conflict, and that's where that's where my work starts, with this new thing I'm into of analyzing, mostly during time of conflict. If two people are getting along and they're fine, you can talk and explain and justify and do anything you want to sway, a decision in any kind of way. But right at the time of conflict, yes or no's are very important. And and I think particularly when there's conflict or two people are not on the same page, yes or no makes a big difference and clears things up. Do you agree with that? If not, tell me why.
I agree with that.
What is the reason you think many people will avoid yes or no's? Because people say, well, it's hard. You can't say yes or no. Well, you can, you just won't sometimes. I don't like yes or no's, especially if my back is against the wall, or if I want to try to convince someone of something otherwise. But yes or no really cuts out, a lot of fat from an explanation or even a conversation or even a misunderstanding. And I'm big on yes or no's, even when, it involves me. Yes or no's without the ability to explain is another thing, because I set myself up, I like the idea of interviewing and analyzing. And I'll even go so far to even say interrogate, so I don't get, so my critics won't have an edge. Anyway, my point is, yes or no's are critical for me, especially at times of conflict. So, I guess I'll just, I'll be okay with that. At least you're not disagreeing that it's important to give yes or no's.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Okay. So I was making a point about, explaining. If you're, yes or no's without the opportunity to explain can be detrimental. So, in my interactions, with people, if I say, okay, you can have an opportunity to explain, but right now I need the yes or no, because I expect to be doing these interviews more often and more so off the record. Whenever I'm not on a live stream and I'm interacting with someone, I will make a comment, something to the effect of, Okay, you can make your explanation, but right now I don't want an explanation. I'm trying to understand, so I need clarity on what it is I'm hearing. So, if you say to a person, I don't want to hear an explanation, that's kind of harsh and kind of maybe even unfair, if I could use that word. But if someone's trying to get clarity and or understanding, and they say, okay, yes or no, am I turning right or left? And then they may say, well, you need to turn. You need to know, rock solid. And it's just me. My personality is different, and different people have different ways of doing things. And I'm just going to speak about me, and I'm hoping that I speak for a part of, most people. Clarity is very important. So yes or no's for me are critical, especially whenever I'm trying to get, clarity on a situation. And I'll leave it on right there. I wasn't sure how that conversation was going to go, and I'm sure it will, spark many more conversations, as I go through, this process of interviews. But I guess I'll move on to the next thing. Do you remember when we on yesterday when we had that conversation? I think, when you were talking, and again, we don't want to get into the specifics of that, but I think when you made mention of it and I asked you some questions and you answered those questions, I think you answered your own question based on the yes or no's that I asked you. Because I think whenever you started, you were more into your heart and feeling. And I think it was my responsibility as your brother and as your friend to say, okay, well, hold on. I hear what you're saying, and I even understand. I was having compassion for, what you were thinking and feeling. But I really wanted you to see the realization of what was going on and get out of, how you were feeling. And I think, I'm going to give myself not a pat on the back, but it's like being there to hear you and then show you a different way to look at it. Because I didn't want to convince you either way. You still had your own thoughts at the end of that. But I think you were able to see it in a different way. And thank you for allowing me to kind of show you a different option. Not that you couldn't figure it out yourself, but I do know that you were more into your heart, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we have to have a balance. So, go ahead.
No, I agree. And you have to be open, when you're talking to other people and so forth and what have you, when you're communicating with another individual. You have to be willing to look at things more than one way, because it's not just in one way to look at it. There's a right way, there's a wrong way. It's just like up and down, left and right, yes and no.
Hot and cold.
Right, and we've gotten away from that when it comes to other people. So we have to understand that we're all unique, we're all different. But when you're communicating, you have to be open. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
To what another person is saying, and not be so quick to offer a suggestion.
Right.
Just listening. Listening is probably one of the hardest skills that we have to learn how to develop, because a lot of us really don't listen.
Right, and listening openly is even harder than that.
So I'm learning also on my own to listen more. I like to talk, but I think I gather more when I learn to listen. To listen,
And I'm going to say this.
You don't have to say anything. You can listen.
Sure.
You don't always have to have a word. You can listen.
Right, I agree. Before I go on, we're going to get on to the next subject. I think, and I'm going to say this in closing so we can get on to the next subject. Having the desire to have our way and not be viewed as wrong or inaccurate or incorrect is a natural human behavior. We don't ever want to be wrong, or we don't ever want to take responsibility for something that's not necessarily good. And it's natural to deflect, in situations when it's, when yes or no's are on the line. And I just want to say to my audience and to myself and, even to you, it's okay to not be right all the time. It's okay to look at a situation and say, okay, I know what I was thinking, but maybe I should have thought, in a different way. It's very difficult to admit when we're either wrong or incorrect. And I think we need to be okay with knowing that, my thoughts may be, how I feel. They may be based on my desires, but may not necessarily be realistic. And it's okay to analyze it. And our brains are really faster than the computers we use. We can think really fast to say, okay, this is, like you said, you got to be able to separate the two. Is this me, or is this the truth and reality? So I'll close on that unless you have something else to say. Hopefully I made some kind of point or brought awareness to, how communication, listening, and hearing is important. So unless you have something else to say, I'll go ahead and close and move on to the next. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next thing is this: going to church or staying home. I'm going to let you jump out the box on what you think that means or where you think I'm going. You just speak on going to church or staying home with whatever comes to mind right now.
Going to church is the one time that supposedly we get a chance to gather around a group of individuals that have the same mindset or there for the same purpose. Okay? Whereas when we don't go to church, we don't have that mindset with the other individuals because we don't know who we're around. Everybody has different beliefs. Everybody has different stances. So we look forward to that because that's how we've been taught to come together, to not forsake the gathering of ourselves together by coming together in church and listening to the minister who's supposed to be sharing with us the instruction manual. And we're supposed to be taking that instruction manual and applying it to our lives. It helps us to go back out into this world that we live in if we're applying it and deal with everyday life and win, because we'll have a different mindset. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's the way I look at it. And it's a choice. I mean, especially with everything that's going on right now, some people in fear, you know what I'm saying? Because they don't want to go to church because of this, and then they want to stay at home. It's almost like we're being trained to isolate ourselves.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I'm kind of down the middle of the fence on this, and I'm not taking one side or the other as of yet. But what I just heard you describe could be the same as a football game. There are people who come together for like-minded thoughts and who believe the same thing. They believe 10 yards, will get you a first down. They believe, their team is, going to outperform the other team. Those things are the same. So, the principles of, when you're not forsaking the brother and the other fans when you go to a football game. I mean, I know it's not church as we know it, but everything you just described about going to church and assembling in church is the same as if you go to a social function. No or yes?
Pretty much the same, I would say. But the difference is the subject matter. See, when we go to a game, we're going there for the team, to see our team play, okay? But when we're going to church, we're going to gather information for our own lives. For our own lives. It's a difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, there are people who don't think going to church is the best or the only place that you can gather information for your lives. What are your thoughts about that?
And that is true. That is true. You don't necessarily, because you are the church, you don't necessarily have to go to church. But I would encourage everyone to go to church. You follow me? Because everybody's not going to read the instruction manual on their own. You have to have someone to teach you.
Question on that note, before you go.
Colleges and schools and so forth, what have you. You don't necessarily have to go to college. You can pick up a book and learn for yourself. But you've been trained, if you want to be this certain discipline, you have to go to school and learn about it. And you have to spend a lot of time doing it. And you have to pass tests to show that you've learned about it before they will allow you to begin to do it.
In regards to learning, what is the primary thing you think church teaches? What is the substance or the primary thing that you think you learn from going to church?
You learn that there is a God. He created you. You learn as to why things are the way they are right now, that everybody has a free will, and this free will came as a result of them exercising it from one man, learning about the knowledge of good and evil. That's why you see what's going on right now. But you learn that you always have a choice. You always have a free will to choose, either right or wrong. And you learn the right is in the instruction manual. It teaches you how to choose right or wrong. It teaches you how not to be selfish, to be selfless when you're dealing with other people, because they have different mindsets.
What is the one thing?
Levels.
What is the one primary thing you think church teaches? And I know churches teaches, many things, and the instruction manual is broad, and that's why you can go every time and hear something different. But what is the primary essence or primary thing that a person can look for that they're going to get, or a church is designed to make sure that a regular churchgoer get? What is the main thing? If you could give me one thing, or all those things concentrated in one, what would it be more like?
It teaches you who you are, what your purpose is. So many people are searching because they don't know who they are. They're looking for their purpose. And it teaches you that you have a purpose. God created you with a purpose. And the only way to find that purpose is through Him. And you have to give an account of what you did with this purpose in this life. One day. That's what it teaches me. That's in one nutshell. Mm-hmm. That I have a purpose. And no matter what, the only way I'm going to discover that purpose is through Him. Mm-hmm. The church may introduce me to that. So then I get into its instruction manual and I learn my purpose and I fulfill it. And that's where I will have joy. That's where I will be fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And you'll find out your purpose is not just for you. It's for the benefit of others. And you'll be more fulfilled than you would as if you had gained something just for yourself.
Right. As a churchgoer myself, I notice there's different parts of church. I participate in church, often, particularly as a musician. I was once also a part of the communications department, so I go and I participate myself. But one thing that everyone that has ever been to church or associate church with is tithe and offerings. Going to church and tithing and offering. How important is it to tithe and make offerings to church? And here's part two of that question. If you don't participate in that part, like I participate in, the music and the communications ministry, tithing is not necessarily a ministry that I know of, but it is a part of the participation, in church. And I'm not on the ushers, so I don't participate in that part. And there's some people may not participate, in being a deacon or, a parking lot attendant or anything like that. But then, another part of church is giving the offering and the tithing. Some people refuse to sing or clap or even stand up. But, you don't get on the people for not participating in the other areas of, church attendance. But tithing and offering seems to be something that is either frowned upon or is just something that's a no-no that you cannot go and not participate in. What are your thoughts on attending church and or tithing or not tithing or offering?
Well, when you tithe and give your offering, you're doing it because of what the word says in Malachi. Will a man rob God? It's not in the church. Is a building that you come to fellowship with. And it's not like they have people from the outside pouring and giving them money to keep on the lights, take care of the benches that you're privileged to sit on,
Okay, we're here with our guest, and as usual, we don't call names or say names, or we don't talk about business or brands or anything like that. It's